living like a stage. Hey, hey, 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 love yourself first, explicitly. You owe it to yourself to move with that energy. Empower your self-esteem. Self-love is king. That's the only way to win. That's how you empower your dream. Living like a stage. Hey, hey, living like a stage. Hey, hey, living like a stage. Hey, hey, living like a stage. Hey, hey.
Hey Lifer Tribe, welcome to another video, Living Life with Stay Hall. And if you're new to the channel, welcome, and thank you so much for tuning in today. And since you're here, please consider hitting that subscribe button and becoming a permanent member of this Lifer Tribe. Y'all, sometimes when we're talking, when we're planning, when we're communicating with others, even when we're thinking, we have the tendency to move too fast. And so what I want to talk to you guys today about is the power of the pause. There are so many things that could turn out much differently, and so many things that could be much smoother and go a lot easier if we just embrace the power of the pause. Everything does not need an automatic response. Everything doesn't have to happen right now. Everything does not need to have a resolution today. It is okay to pause. So many times we find ourselves just running on autopilot and doing and fixing and solving and responding, acting as if everything that's going on in our lives and everything that everyone wants from us is this blazing inferno, this fire that has to be put out right now, when really it's just a flickering flame, just a little smoldering ash. It ain't going nowhere. You have time. There are so many disagreements and arguments and debates that last for way longer than they need to. Relationships are fractured just because people did not utilize the power of the pause. So let's talk about it. What is the power of the pause? The power of the pause is exactly what it sounds like. Knowing when to pause, knowing when to take a beat, knowing when to count to 10, step back, relax, relate, release, think before you speak, think before you act, and then being able to see how powerful it was just to be able to take that few moments, that couple of days, maybe that week, that month, that year before you did whatever it was that you wanted to do. As much as I talk about stepping out on faith and doing those things that you were afraid to do, being bold, being courageous, stepping outside of the box, that still doesn't mean that you have to do it right this moment. All that means is you need to at least give yourself the opportunity to think about doing those things. Plan those things out. Do the research. When I say if you've always wanted to start that business, go ahead and start that business, that doesn't mean run to the bank today, open up a line of credit, hire 3 employees and buy tons of stock. No, that means commit to opening the business, do your research, make sure that it's going to make sense for you. Take your time, find out who your target audience is, make sure that this is going to be a viable business, make sure that you get all of your paperwork in order, make sure that everything is legitimized with the IRS, with your state. Do your foundation work. Don't just jump out there and say, oh, okay, y'all, I'm in business. I just bought $25,000 worth of product. I hired an assistant. I took out a line of credit and not really have a foundation. Pause, take a beat, take a second, take however long you need to take to make sure that you are making the best decisions for yourself. The worst thing in the world to happen is when you finally decide to step out on faith, do that thing, open that business, whatever it is, and you move too fast out from not moving at all, right? So we weren't moving at all. It was just a dream in the back of our minds. Now all of a sudden you listen to a Stay Hall video and said, you know what? I'm starting this business tomorrow. And you do all the things way too fast without doing your research. And now this thing that was once your dream ends up being a nightmare and a disaster simply because you didn't utilize the power of the pause. So putting your thoughts into action and moving forward doesn't necessarily mean that it has to be fast. Slow and steady still wins the race. We have to remember the story of the tortoise and the hare. You can be moving and still moving forward and going in the right direction and getting to the same end result that you always wanted, even if you move slow. The important part is just the fact that you're moving. Another time in our lives where the power of the pause is so important is when we are engaging in crucial, critical, tough, difficult conversations with our family members and our friends. Everything doesn't need a response. Everything doesn't have to be responded to right now. There is nothing wrong with, in the midst of a conversation, saying, you know what? I just want to take a pause. I don't want to say anything that I probably don't mean. I don't want to say anything that I would have to later apologize for. I just need to take a moment to process what's going on right now. We should probably both take a moment to process what's going on right now. We're in the midst of a conflict, and that's understood, and that's okay. But let's not make it worse by just talking and talking and talking and being in emotion and being in anger and talking over each other to the point of where things are going to be said that we may both regret. Let's just take a pause. You can do the same thing if the conversation is via email or via text. Just because that email came to you right now doesn't mean that you have to respond to it right now. I tell my clients all the time, if you receive an email or a text message from someone and the emotion that it gives you is anger when you read it, definitely don't respond to that right now. Read it. Read it again. Read it again. Read it slower. Read it with a different tone of voice in your mind. Read it the way that you would want somebody to read it if you sent it before you respond. And then when and if, and I say if because I've said more than one time, everything doesn't even need a response. Sometimes you're given information, you can take it in, you can process it, and it doesn't mean that you have to respond, especially if responding is going to make the situation even worse. However, if you do make the decision to respond, take that time before you respond. Make sure that you're clear on what it is that you're responding to. Don't just assume that somebody is coming at you wrong if somebody is, saying things that you don't quite understand. Don't be afraid to respond with questions, clarifying questions. You don't have to necessarily respond in defense, respond in retaliation, but when you do respond, make sure that you read your response several times before you hit send. Make sure that you are truly conveying the message that you want to convey to them. Make sure that when they read it, they'll be able to understand. And then also, whenever you're responding to something like that, open the floor for them to ask you clarifying questions. And sometimes when we get something via text or via email, we might want to respond, but we don't want to respond the same way we received it. So our response can simply be, I don't want to really respond to this via text or via email because so much can be lost in translation. When do you have time where we can actually have a face-to-face conversation? I just feel that this conversation would be much better served if we're able to see each other and hear each other's tones, be able to look into each other's eyes, read each other's body language, because I don't want to respond to this in writing and for something to get misconstrued. Taking those pauses before you make decisions to respond, to react, to move forward can make such a huge difference in your life. Whenever you're trying to make decisions on new life changes, whether it's relationships, financial, never feel pressured to do anything right away. There is power in the pause. We have the ability to take however much time we need to process. That's a part of self-care. Don't feel forced into moving. Don't feel forced into reacting. Take your time to pause. When we don't pause and we just react and we just do, we're setting ourselves up for loads of anxiety, loads of stress. And oftentimes when we move too quickly, whether it's to act on something or to respond to something, and we're trying to move quick because we want to get it done, we want things to happen fast, there's usually going to be some mistake that's made. Whether it's a mistake in something that you said and you didn't mean and you regret it, or if it's about making a decision or moving forward, you're going to miss a step, there's something you're going to overlook. And when we make those mistakes, things that we were trying to do really quick, things that we were trying to just get it over with, end up now being prolonged. So if you move too fast and you don't take that pause before you make that business decision, but then there's something that you missed as far as your paperwork, there's something that you missed as far as your certifications or whatever, now you have to go back and redo it. So the process is going to take even longer than it would have taken if you would have just taken the pause to begin with and done things right the first time. When you make certain mistakes in business, sometimes there's waiting periods. Sometimes now we're depending on other people to do something, where if we would have just done our research, done our due diligence, taken that pause and done it correctly the first time, it would have gotten done a lot quicker than even when we started moving too fast. When we decide not to take the pause before we respond to that angry email or respond in a poor way during that critical, crucial conversation, now we are a lot of times making this argument, this disagreement last way longer because something was said in the conversation that hurt someone else's feelings, and now we're not speaking to each other. So we're not only in conflict, we're no longer even communicating. And how many of us know that that can sometimes go on for years or forever? And so instead of just taking that pause to process, to think before you respond, think before you react, now you have a fractured relationship where the two of you or the group of you are no longer speaking. You're no longer in communication. The relationship is torn. And sometimes even when we reconcile, things are never the way they were before, because no matter how much we apologize or how many apologies and forgiveness is accepted and given, once something is said, it's said. And people are going to remember that. And we may be back in relationship, but there's always going to be that cloud. It's always going to be a feeling of discomfort, that awkwardness, and you're just going to move a little different. Where if you would have just practiced the power of the pause, read your text 3 or 4 times before you sent it, taking a pause in the middle of that conversation, using your emotional intelligence to say, you know what, this isn't really getting anywhere right now. I want to resolve this with you, but let's revisit this at a later date when cooler heads prevail. Let's both go to our separate corners, think about it, because I don't want our relationship to be fractured over one conversation, one disagreement, usually one misunderstanding. So I want you all to go into the future practicing the power of the pause. I don't care how quickly you may have reacted and responded today. Tomorrow is a new day, a new beginning. Think about it. Count to 3, count to 10. Take a couple of deep breaths before you make that rash decision, before you respond in a negative way. Remember, you are in control. Don't let anyone, any situation, or any circumstance force you into moving before you're ready. So hopefully I've said something today that's made an impact, made a light bulb go off, and made someone think about the power of the pause and the control that we can exhibit when we utilize the power of the pause. So guys, hopefully you guys enjoyed this video, and I feel like I've said you guys a million times, so forgive me if I did, but my mouth is hurting. It's been hurting. It's still hurting. But I want to make sure that I continue to put out content. And y'all know the drill. Always be kind and love one another, but don't forget to live your life. LYFE. Love yourself first explicitly. And I'll see y'all in the next one. Bye.
Living like a stage. Hey, hey. 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 Love yourself first, explicitly. You owe it to yourself to move with that energy. Empower your self-esteem. Self-love is king. That's the only way to win. That's how you empower your dreams. Living like a stage. Hey, hey. Living like a stage.